There was an ancient king called Cyrus, who was actually regarded as one of the best monarchs in all the world. And one of the things that he did was he sent the symbols of the gods that his people had collected in building his empire back to the countries where they came from, so that the gods who were associated with those symbols could be happy. That's an interesting story, isn't it? And that is what totemism is all about. So today I would like to talk about totemism as a religion. Welcome to another episode of Just in Time Worlds. My name is Marie Mullaney. Today's agenda will be totem objects and their effects on culture, the intimacy of totemism as a spiritual path, totemism and its effect on magic, and finally, I will discuss how to create a totem object. If you like this kind of content, please do hit the like button. And if you really like this kind of content, you can go over to ko-fi.com/justintimeworlds and buy me a cup of coffee. Really appreciate the support. Okay, let's get cracking. Totemism is all about a physical object creating a link with a spirit. You have a specific object and it is the home and the link to a totemic spirit. Now, this totemic spirit could be one of your ancestors, or it could be an animal spirit, as it is in the Jane M. All books. In Raymond Feist's books that he wrote with Janie Wirtz, Daughter of the Empire, there is the Natami, which isn't really part of the religion, but it represents the family honor of every family. And without the Natami, it is considered that the ancestors would not be able to find their way home and would be unhappy, and the family would eventually wither and die because their ancestors would get lost. And so that is a form of totemism that is not a direct religion, but still speaks to drawing that link between the spiritual and the real world by means of an object. The interesting thing from a fantasy world's perspective is, how do you get that totemic object and what happens when you lose it? Like when Cyrus returned those totemic objects to the various countries from which they'd been taken, it was a real blessing to those people because it returned to them their gods. That kind of tension of the totemic spirits being lost because the object is lost is a very interesting plot element to play with in a fantasy world. And of course it creates a very direct trigger for people needing to take action to find the lost totemic object and return it to its home. In part, that trigger is caused by the fact that totemism is an extremely intimate religion. It's your totem. It is the Natami of your family. It is your ancestors. You are responsible for carrying them from one home to another using the totemic objects. They need to be able to find you by following the totemic objects. Even if there's a shaman who identifies the totemic objects for you and identifies who your totem is, the relationship is still very, very intimate with the totem spirits. That intimacy lends itself to personal discovery and to plot tension when something happens to the totemic object. Imagine if your spirituality is tied into this totemic object and it breaks. What does that mean for the character? What does that mean for the person who was there when the totemic object broke? Did the spirits desert them? How do they regain the favor of the spirits? All of those lead to truly great plot lines. Which brings me to totemism and magic. In a way, totemism is very similar to sympathetic magic, which is to say magic based on voodoo, as below, so above, where you have a small object that ties to a larger object and that can affect that larger object. So it would be interesting to play with the magic where your totemic objects can also affect the spirits. Maybe using the totemic objects in rituals, you can get the spirits to help you in some way. Maybe you can use the totemic objects to call the physical manifestations of the spirits to you. So maybe you could carve a totem of a deer, for example, and call the deer to you to make a hunt successful. Jane M. All does this. Her books are set in the pre-agricultural era, in the hunter-gatherer time period. Her shamans paint cave paintings to call the deer to the people so that they can have a successful hunt. So it would be very interesting to build your sympathetic magic in with your totemistic spirits and to bind the two together. You could also go with the natural conclusion of totemism would be shapeshifting. So your shamans would be capable of assuming the shape of the totem spirit that they are most closely associated with. And those can be very interesting effects to play with in terms of adopting totemism in your world. Because totemism is such an intimate thing, it plays well with others. You can have gods and have totemistic spirits. And in fact, Raymond Feist does that. There are gods in Turani and they are the religion and people worship them. But there is also totemism in that your ancestor's spirit lives in your Natami object, which is associated with your house. And if you move, if your house moves, you must take your Natami with you, and that will take your ancestors with you to your new home and will let them bless the new home. But how do you create such a totemic object? Well, first you need to decide what spirit it links to. Does it link to your ancestors? Does it link to an animistic spirit? Does it link to a god, perhaps? Once you've decided what it actually links to, you need to decide what it is. If it links to, say, your ancestors, maybe it's a thing that is passed down through your family. Something like a specific carving, or a sword, perhaps. Or perhaps it is a piece of jewelry. Or maybe it's a rock in the shape of the thing that it links to. How does it link back to the spirit that it's linking to? How do you identify that link? What happens if you lose the totem object? Are you now deserted? Do you need to get it back? Once you've gotten it back, does it immediately start working again? Or is there a ritual that you need to enact to cleanse the totemic object in order to use it again for its designated purpose? How do you use the totemic object? Does it give you any abilities? Can you use it to communicate with a spirit? Can it be used by the spirit to communicate to you and to give you guidance? And that is totemism in a nutshell. I hope that you have enjoyed this episode. If you have, please do hit the like button, consider subscribing, and if you really enjoyed it, head on over to ko-fi.com and buy me a cup of coffee. My name is Marie Mullaney, and this has been another episode of Just in Time Worlds.